Iraq orders a roundup of thousands of Americans and other Westerners. Saddam Hussein plans to use them as shields in 100 different sites. President Bush says they are hostages and demands their release.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from Baghdad, Iraq. Good evening. This is Iraq's Monument of Martyrs, commemorating those who died in Iraq's 8-year murderous war with Iran. What the wall represents for the Vietnam experience in the United States, this represents for Iraq about its war with Iran. This is a city and a country that believes U.S. attacks and a new war may now be inevitable. We'll show you around Baghdad a little later on the broadcast, but first today's major developments.
Iraq today confirmed that Americans and other Westerners have already been positioned as human shields at military and industrial sites. Diplomatic sources say they have independent reporting on this. CBS News was told tonight by a senior Iraqi source that President Saddam Hussein wants foreigners distributed to 100 sites around the country. In Iraqi-occupied Kuwait, 12 Americans and dozens of other Westerners have been moved to undisclosed locations. Saddam Hussein today ordered U.S. and other embassies in Kuwait to be closed by noon Friday, leaving foreigners with no place to go for help or protection. Iraq's citizens have been told to turn in any Westerners they see. They have been warned anyone who harbors a Westerner will be subject to, quote, the harshest penalties. Read that, death. And in Baltimore, Maryland, President Bush finally says it, quote, the Americans being held by Iraq are nothing less than hostages. Wyatt Andrews reports.
George Bush today acknowledged that he now faces the very kind of crisis that burned the last 2 American presidents, Americans held hostage.
We've been reluctant to use the term hostage, but when Saddam Hussein specifically offers to trade the freedom of those citizens of many nations he holds against their will in return for concessions, there can be little doubt that whatever these innocent people are called, they are in fact hostages.
The president denied he was turning up the heat, yet emphatically signaled that while holding Americans is one thing, harming them would draw a military response.
And I want there to be no misunderstanding. I will hold the government of Iraq responsible for the safety and well-being of American citizens held against their will.
Beyond hostages, the president's more subtle mission today was to prepare the nation for a long, extended showdown in the desert. Because Mr. Bush is worried that stalemate could sap the national will and erode support, he now describes a crisis with no quick or clean ending.
A crisis that will require American planning, patience, and yes, personal sacrifice. Will it take time? Of course. For we're engaged in a cause larger than ourselves.
There was also a verbal attempt today to hit Saddam Hussein where the U.S. thinks he's vulnerable: religion. Tired of Hussein's calls for a Muslim holy war against the West, the president countered today by claiming that hostage-taking is anti-Islamic.
You are violating the norms of your own religion. You are going against the age-old Arab tradition of showing kindness and hospitality to visitors.
The president has left unspoken his obvious decision not to let the lives of the hostages be the only motivation in his thinking. He vowed the United States would not be intimidated, an implicit warning that Saddam's use of Americans as human shields will not, by itself, deter a shooting war. Wyatt Andrews, CBS News, Kennebunkport.
The rounding up of 12 more Americans by the Iraqis from Kuwait City hotels over the weekend has heightened fears that the Iraqis' human shield policy is being implemented. Yet although it says it has reports that some of those Americans have been moved to strategic locations in Iraq, the State Department says it cannot confirm exactly where they are.
We know that at least 12 American citizens who were staying in hotels, that is the Hyatt, the International, and the Hilton, have been relocated by the Iraqis. We do not know where they are at this time.
Also detained by the Iraqis over the weekend, 82 British citizens. And Iraq is demanding that all foreign embassies in Kuwait be closed by this coming weekend. The U.S. hasn't responded to the demand, but Great Britain has refused.
We have taken every opportunity over the weekend, public and private, to point out to the Iraqis that this behavior is illegal and repulsive.
Feelings shared by the families of Americans captive in Iraq and Kuwait.
I have, hard feelings against Saddam Hussein, who would use people as pawns, but they don't consider life to be as important as we do.
I feel very sad about the whole situation, to know that these people didn't go there on any military mission, and they have been taking hostages.
The State Department today widened its travel advisory for the area, cautioning Americans to stay out of Jordan as well. For those still stuck in Kuwait, Voice of America broadcasts are warning that while some people have fled across the desert, it's not recommended.
We advise Americans who are considering this route that there is a confirmed report that at least one person has died attempting to cross the desert.
The previous reluctance of the administration to label the captive Americans as hostages was based on a desire not to be seen to be the victim of yet another Middle East hostage standoff. Now that's over. The State Department said today the prime concern of the U.S. embassies in Baghdad and Kuwait City is the safety and welfare of the Americans there. Mark Phillips, CBS News, the State Department.
The United States military moves and maneuvers in this area. For the latest on that, David Martin has a report from the Pentagon.
Yes, sir. In reference to your destination, would you spell that? Yes, U.S. Warship, what exactly is the problem?
Voices reflected the rising tensions in the Persian Gulf as the U.S. Navy challenged commercial shipping in the ongoing search for violators of the embargo against Iraq. The USS Reed and other Navy warships continue to shadow two Iraqi oil tankers in a slow-motion confrontation at sea. First spotted on Saturday, the two tankers have ignored warning shots fired across the bow and continue on a course bound for Yemen, one of the few countries which still supports Iraq. Without saying how, the president gave the impression he plans to stop them before they get there.
Well, just watch. You just watch and see.
The ships are still about 3 days away from Yemen, and officials say the president has delayed giving the order to disable and board them in order to give the United Nations time to adopt a resolution approving the use of force to intercept Iraqi shipping. Also, there is concern that seizing an Iraqi vessel could start a war the U.S. is not yet fully prepared to fight. There are now about 32,000 American servicemen in Saudi Arabia, with another 17,000 at sea, facing 160,000 Iraqi troops in Kuwait. If fighting started, the U.S. would make up for its disadvantage on the ground by relying heavily on air power to stop an Iraqi assault. There are about 100 fighter and ground attack planes already in Saudi Arabia, and today a squadron of stealth fighters took off from Virginia for the long flight to the Persian Gulf. But military officers say that until large numbers of tanks arrive, the U.S. would be unable to launch an effective counterattack. A tank brigade left Georgia last week and is still several days steaming time away from Saudi Arabia, while tanks at Fort Hood, Texas are only now being spray painted with desert camouflage.
And then there are the reserves, which the Army says it needs, among other things, to help load the ships carrying weapons to the troops in Saudi Arabia. Officials now expect President Bush to order a limited call-up of about 40,000 reserves tomorrow. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
Our Middle Eastern correspondent Bob Simon is in Saudi Arabia. He has the latest from there.
The dawn came up like thunder, the thunder of a vast army poised on the brink of war. The 7th Marine Expeditionary Brigade has come to Saudi Arabia. This is the first time it's been deployed in a hostile situation. Included in its arsenal, howitzers, helicopters, heavy metal. All the equipment of the brigade, commanded by Major General John Hopkins, was unloaded in the record time of 36 hours.
Would you consider yourselves battle ready now?
Well, we're not battle ready right this minute, but we're going to be battle ready in a very short time.
The helicopter drivers, that's what the pilots call themselves now, and the men who lead the choppers through their paces like lion tamers see their mission as little short of a crusade.
The guys asked to be stopped, so somebody has to do it.
If that's what will be done, these men will be the doers, Marines becoming desert foxes, fresh, enthusiastic, largely untested young men training in a moonscape to go up against Iraq's battle-hardened veterans of an 8-year war.
Leave the guns where they are right now. Let's get some water.
The men are digging in a defensive posture. They know their mission is to defend Saudi Arabia. But somehow, Marines have never talked like men on the defensive.
President Bush doesn't want Iraq and Kuwait and we're basically here to get him out of Kuwait.
That's what we're here for, to take over Kuwait again, that he took over, and show Saudi that, hey, you can't push America around.
The Marines gripe about what it's like here, not about why they're here. As far as their mission is concerned, there is much confidence, few misgivings. It's as if the Vietnam syndrome is being buried right now in the sands of Saudi Arabia.
Well, I hope the lessons of Vietnam have not been forgotten, but I think the clear-cut moral issues, the outrage of the entire world community, leaves no doubt that we're the good guys.
One lesson from Vietnam is that Americans have lost patience with protracted struggles in distant lands. And officers here admit that every day in this desert, so much oil, so little shade, is an argument against staying very long. If the Americans have a blockade and technology on their side, time may still be against them. Time and the sun. Bob Simon, CBS News, Saudi Arabia.
They will be among the last to arrive in the Persian Gulf, these Marines of the 4th Amphibious Brigade who set sail today from North Carolina. But they may well be among the first to fight.
Hopefully everything will be all right.
Unlike other American troops deployed in Saudi Arabia, many of whom are still awaiting their equipment, these Marines bring their own Air Force, even their own landing craft.
Commence executive officer's message of berth inspection.
This is a force designed and trained for landing on hostile beaches, like Kuwait's. But the young Marines sailing out today don't give it much thought.
I just can't picture anything happening. It just don't seem like, it just seems routine, real routine.
Only the older hands smell the danger.
I think there's definitely going to be shots fired. Some idiot's going to make a mistake, either one of our idiots or one of their idiots, and then I think there will be shots fired.
It's a 3-week voyage to the Persian Gulf. Plenty of time for making sure things work. Time to steal a nap after 36-hour shifts. And time to worry about what lies ahead. Where do you think you're going?
I don't know. I don't know where we're going.
And about missed goodbyes.
Well, nobody had enough time to say goodbye, I guess.
As the Marines here point out, they are not much for drawing defensive lines in the sand. And should President Bush decide to switch from the defensive to the offensive, it would likely be with the men aboard this ship. Jim Stewart, CBS News, with the Marines at sea.
Still to come on tonight's CBS Evening News from Baghdad, we'll have more about what's going on in this country and in the general Persian Gulf region. Plans for rationing have been announced here, rationing which will center on food items, pharmaceuticals, and medicines. Iraqi officials say they are doing this as a precaution, just in case, as they put it, we have to dig in for the long pull. CBS News correspondent Alan Pizzi joins me now. Alan, in talking to rank-and-file Iraqis, what's their view?
Dan, people here say they can take it. They took it for 8 years during the war with Iran, and in fact, they built this city during that war. They say they can hang on. One of the real problems is going to be a shortage of spare parts for utilities. According to people, again, who've surveyed the area, they say that they can't speak for the military, which probably has enough, but waterworks, electricity, that sort of thing, they may not have enough spare parts to keep it functioning at full rate for a long time.
Some of the analysts in Washington say, listen, if you keep the economic pressure on, it's got to crack them. What's the view from the street?
The view from the street is that they're going to hold. Mind you, opinions are not something that are voiced freely here, but the general feeling seems to be, you push us and we're going to hang on. We're not going to give in. And as I say, they said they took it before. They say they can take it again.
And you have these returning prisoners of war now. Notice that Iraqi eyes and minds were riveted on the television set. Those scenes of Iraqi prisoners from the Iranian war, given Saddam Hussein's new initiative with Iran coming back.
Now that could pose a problem. These people are coming back from, many of them, 8 years in captivity, terrible experiences in the war. They come back to a country that has just, in a peace treaty, signed away all the things they fought for and suffered for over those 8 years. And the question being asked is, are these people and their relatives, all of whom lost someone in that war, ready to psychologically fight another war? That's a big unknown here.
Alan Pizzi, thanks. We'll have more from Baghdad a little later in the broadcast, so stay with us.
India placed its troops all along its northern border with Pakistan on alert today, following reports of more clashes with Pakistani soldiers in divided Kashmir. Pakistan denies that there were any incidents, but Pakistan's top official in the disputed region ordered mandatory military training for all males. Iran, despite its recent reconciliation with Iraq, told the United Nations today that it backs the economic sanctions against Baghdad. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi today criticized Iraq for its holding of foreign hostages, but he also urged the UN to condemn the United States for sending troops to Saudi Arabia. He said he may pull Libya out of the UN, saying there's no point in belonging if it can't keep peace. What's going on in the Middle East, of course, affects everyone in this country in one way or another, and Frank Courier visited the nation's midsection this week to sample the reaction there.
A country mile from the heart of Kansas, farmers' talk is turning from bushels of wheat to worries of war.
They just snap their finger and we go have war, I'm afraid.
I hate to see it happening, but I think it has to be done.
They should have been smiling after this summer's record wheat harvest, nearly 500 million bushels in Kansas, but prices are down. In the oil fields, where a barrel of Kansas crude has soared $10 with the Gulf crisis, drillers are cautious.
I'm much more worried about the Americans we have over there than the price we're getting for our oil.
In hard-to-reach places like Susank, Kansas, population 80, townspeople stay close in touch with changing oil and wheat prices and headlines from the Gulf.
There are unconfirmed reports that some of Saddam Hussein's own officers have tried to assassinate him and failed.
At the gas pump, where the price leaped $0.25 a gallon last week, skeptics trust big oil companies about as far as Saddam Hussein.
He promised Kuwait he wasn't going to cross their border, and as soon as they turned their backs, he followed them right on through there. I don't believe he's a man to be trusted.
And when friends gather for morning coffee in Elmer Trapp's General Store, they worry about many of the same things as people in big cities.
I'm just like all the rest of the boys. I hope this doesn't turn into another Vietnam.
If this is going to go on for a year or two and shut down the oil situation, it's going to make it a lot worse for us around here.
Still, for the farmers with wells on their land, higher crude oil prices mean bigger royalties. It could offset losses for wheat growers like Roger Fanchier, who's hurt by the U.S. ban on grain exports to Iraq.
Everything affects the farmer in every part of the world. And this invasion in Iraq may be news to you guys, but it's just another event for us.
Even though the Mideast is half a world away from the Midwest, the Gulf crisis is still adding to the woes of withering little farm towns like this one, battered by hard times. Now inflation threatens hamlets like Pawnee Rock and families everywhere whose concerns for the future stretch way beyond Main Street.
Our boys are there, and they're part of us, and we can't help but be affected by what's going on. They're our neighbors, our friends, our son-in-laws.
With the dog days of August fast fading in farm country, the sobering threat of Americans in a faraway war has touched home. Frank Courier, CBS News, Deception Valley, Kansas.
After the better part of a week in Baghdad, these are some closing thoughts for tonight about the place, the people, and the times.
Iraq prides itself on being the cradle of civilization, the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates. For these people, this showdown has taken on distinctly religious overtones. Iraqis pray for their country and talk about a new holy war. These people have won the respect of Americans who have been living and working here, Americans who now find themselves officially hostages. This is what they tell us. The Iraqis are some of the most industrious and progressive people in the Middle East, tough, proud people, good people, friendly, when they are treated with respect. People who hold their ground and fight fiercely when they feel they're cornered. For many Iraqis, this is becoming a religious issue. Islam against the infidel. Americans here say, don't underestimate the Iraqis. If you're going to fight, be prepared for a long, tough, no-holds-barred fight.
And that's part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News, reporting from Baghdad, Iraq. Stay tuned to this CBS station for all the late developments in the Middle East. We'll see you tomorrow. From Baghdad, good night.
Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, Hollywood's hottest brother act.
We fought bitterly our whole lives.
Their story and more on Face to Face with Connie Chung tonight.
This is CBS.